Hello and welcome to this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and as we start summer, we brought in Victoria Grasela from the United Way. And obviously, the people who've watched the show over the past few years have seen Victoria in the fall.
Yep.
So in the summertime here, it's a little rare. Victoria, of course, from the United Way of Greater New Bedford. She is the Vice President of Marketing and Community Engagement. But we're going to talk about food insecurity, which is what she has come in for in the past couple of years during the holiday season, or right before the holiday season. Yes. But I was thinking of what she had talked to me about last fall when, and I'll never forget, she's like, Jim, summer's even worse than now because school's out.
Yeah.
And it struck me because in the not too distant future, the city's starting their summer lunch program, and they're actually starting a dinner program too.
Oh, I hadn't heard that one yet.
At Monty's.
Okay.
And I said, I got to get Victoria in because right now things are just difficult as all get out for people.
Yeah.
First of all, thanks for coming in.
Jim, thank you so much for having me. This is an important topic that we have to continue to talk about.
Food insecurity is just crazy right now. I was reading a thing from the USDA reports that more than 38 million people, including 12 million kids, are food insecure right now.
Yes.
Obviously nationwide.
Yes.
That's
so,
just...
To put it in perspective for Eastern Mass, it's 1 in 11 kids. Like, think about that. In a classroom of 30 kids, that's at least 3 kids that are food insecure.
Right.
That just blows my mind that there's that many kids living in a situation like that. And so that's what we're trying to do with the Hunger Commission and with all the food pantries locally and with the schools and the city doing their city lunch programs. It's so important to keep those kids fed. You know, of course, the adults, same thing, but the kids are what we really need to be focused on.
And the interesting thing, too, is that, as you were saying, I mean, right now in the schools, although it could change because I know there's legislation, but for the time being, or until the school just ended recently, kids could get breakfast. We're not talking bacon and eggs, but we're talking breakfast, yogurt, cereal, milk, and they'd get lunch.
Yes.
And it was free for everybody.
100% free, yes.
Yep. So now school's over. And as you said, now's when the
what?
trouble begins.
Yes.
Because you basically have now 2 months with kids, in a lot of cases, trying to figure out where their next meal's coming from.
Exactly. And it's scary. It's scary for a lot of families who are already struggling. And then it's really scary for those families who have never been in this situation before due to the pandemic. You know, we're still in the pandemic, of course, and we're feeling different effects now than where we were even a year ago. You know, there were so many more free programs before, and now things are starting to go away. And so I think families who have never had to ask for help before are trying to figure out how to ask for help and where to go for that help. And so these programs, you know, that the city are doing or that we're doing are just so important to make sure we're getting the word out to let people know that we're here to help and that we want to make sure that you have the food you need.
One of the things, so those lunch programs and the breakfast now are gone. And I know the lunch program, as I said, starts as sort of now.
Yes.
July 1st is really sort of a target date, if you will. But do you know how many kids, in a sense, you said 1 in 11, but when you see, like, at least in the New Bedford school system or whatever, and it's not just New Bedford, we're not talking just New Bedford kids.
This is a global problem, honestly. This is not just a local issue, it's not just a state issue, it's across the nation and across the globe that people are going to be feeling these effects.
And so if you receive calls or just things that says, hey, what do we do now?
So we haven't just yet. I expect that they will be coming, with New Bedford schools now getting out for the summer. I have a feeling we will see an increase in those calls, and we'll see an increase in the numbers in the food pantries. The pantries are already reporting that the numbers are significantly up from where they were even a month ago. So we haven't gotten them yet, but I do anticipate that they'll be coming, and we are prepared to tell people about, the city's lunch program, our mobile market that's starting up very soon, and then the pantries that are open on a daily basis that people can visit and get those items that they need. We're also trying to do more education around SNAP benefits, which is formerly food stamps, where people can apply for benefits where they can buy things at the grocery store, farmers markets, or whatever it may be. And then with the SNAP program, you actually automatically are enrolled in the HIP program, which allows you to buy fresh produce at the farmers markets, and whatever you spend there, they'll actually put back on your SNAP card. So you're getting the free vegetables and then can have that money to go spend on other items that you need for your house. So it's a lot of education too, and letting people know that these programs are out there. Our family center is here to help people sign up for those benefits if they need them and never have had to do it in the past. But it's a lot of pieces that have to come together to make sure families know where they can get this help.
And as you said, like in the last month, you've seen an increase, but inflation is up. Gas price, I mean, just the fact that things are costing more, I would imagine you're seeing more people who are, I would say, quote, middle class, family, a family of 4 or 5, a husband and wife and 3 kids, all of a sudden, the cost of groceries is through the roof.
Right. And if they are working and now they have to get to work with the gas, that's going up. So they're making the decision to have to go to work and have a job and have a career and to pay that gas mileage, and then something else has to take a hit. We've seen this over the years where people have to choose between maybe prescriptions and food, and obviously the prescriptions are the more important piece, so that's what they're getting. And so now we're seeing that on a different level where now it's like, okay, well, do I go to work to earn money, or, and maybe my family takes a little bit of a hit on the food side for now. Something's got to give at some point in this whole thing, for families to really feel comfortable again. But I think we are seeing more families who have never had to do this before, that are that middle class, that have been okay. But now with the inflation, with the gas prices, with the food prices, it's tough.
And you touched upon this off camera, which was interesting too, is that some of the monies that people were getting, relief from the state or federal, that's not there anymore either.
Not there.
Those safety nets are now gone.
Right. So that's tough too, because people were relying on that money to buy extra food for the week or whatever it may be, and now that's all gone. There was extra money on the SNAP cards that people were getting each week, depending on the size of their family. There were the relief checks that we all received, and now that's all gone. And so it's the programs locally are doing everything they can to support families. But again, it goes back to if you've never had to do it before, I think it becomes a little bit more difficult of, well, where do I go, where do I turn? And that's where we're trying to get the word out about programs like the Lunch in the Park or our mobile market.
Tell us a little bit about the mobile market too.
Yeah.
I think the Lunch in the Parks, and we'll talk about them, but tell us about the mobile markets.
So our mobile market, I believe this is our 8th season, if I did my math right. So we started 8 years ago as a way to provide fresh produce for free to families that were in need. We originally started the program with the idea that working families who are in need still because of any number of situations, they can't necessarily go to a food pantry. Food pantry hours are typically very limited. They're usually during the day. So if you're working, you can't get to a food pantry to get those items you need. Also, produce can be very expensive now, more so than ever. And then on the weekends, the only real pantries that are open on the weekends there's one in Wareham, Damien's Place, and then there's some church ones. But if you are not religious, you might feel a little strange about going to a church pantry. So really, Damien's is the big one that's open on a Saturday. So when we started the mobile market, we thought about that. We listened to feedback from folks in the neighborhoods that we work with, and we decided to run our mobile markets from 5:30 to 7. So that way, if you do have a typical 9 to 5 job, but still need that extra support, you're able to come see us after you get out of work. All the produce that we hand out is from the Sharing the Harvest farm, which is up at the Dartmouth YMCA. Everything they grow there, they donate to the Hunger Commission. We deliver that produce to all the pantries locally anyway, but now this is a way for us to get it to folks who aren't able to go to those pantries. So that was how we started this whole thing. And at first we would bag the items, give you a bag of food. As the years went on, we started hearing more feedback, and so we've actually changed the model completely. So now it really is a grocery store style. You choose what you want from it. So we'll set up a whole line of tables with different fresh produce, anything from cucumbers, tomatoes, corn, kale, bok choy, onions. It really depends on the day and the part of the season we're in, of course, what's growing the best. And then people who are needing the food can come through. We do have a quick just form that we ask people to fill out, so that way we can let you know about other programming that's happening that you might be able to benefit from. And you just go through the line and say, yes, I would like 3 tomatoes. Nope, I don't want any kale this week. And you get to choose what you want and what's right for your size family. Because that's the thing, is when we were bagging it, we'd put a bunch of stuff in a bag, and it didn't matter if you had 1 person in your house or 7 people, you were getting the same thing.
Right.
So the hope was that at least the person with the 1 might be sharing it with neighbors. But the way we've moved to this choice model is now you really get to pick what's right for you. And if you are sharing with neighbors, you could pick up a little bit extra maybe for some of them. So the mobile markets will start very soon. They always kick off the second week in July. And they'll go through mid-October because that's really when the farming season isn't growing September, as much. Yeah. They are installing some greenhouses, so they'll be able to do a little bit more over the winter, but not at the scale that they're doing now. And then we have some recipe cards for some items that if you've never used them before, here's how to cook them, here's how to store them so that way they don't go bad. And it's just, we've made it a very welcoming place for people to come feel safe, grab what they need, go. We tend to see the same people every year, which is great. People know about us, but we're always trying to get out the word, especially in a time like now where people have never had to ask for help before. You need to know about our program. This is going to be a huge benefit for you. It's free, fresh produce, all locally grown. It's amazing stuff too. Like they don't grow anything bad. Honestly, it's really great fresh produce. And we have volunteers that are the ones handing out the food every night. We have a wait list always for volunteers for that. So
that's a good thing, because I know that one of the things they talk about is there's not as many people volunteering their time.
Yeah. And some of that had to do with the pandemic too, where people were a little bit nervous about going out. Organizations weren't taking as many volunteers because they weren't sure who was coming in, and they were trying to limit their numbers in the office. But what's great about the mobile market is it's outside. Right. So it's a little bit more spread out. It's a little, you got your fresh air coming through all the time. So volunteers have been wonderful volunteering all through the pandemic for the mobile market. We've never stopped. We actually added on winter mobile markets the past 2 years, just for like a pop-up couple weeks. But this is something that we feel strongly that we got to keep continuing to do. It's a benefit for the community. Again, it's at night, which is huge for folks that are working.
The timing is huge, right?
Yeah. And people are just able to come get what they need. And so we do those. We actually do them in New Bedford and Wareham now. A couple of years ago, we moved into the Wareham space. And so we do Tuesday nights in Wareham and Thursdays in New Bedford. And those are the ones in New Bedford take place alternating between the north and the south end. So that way we're in 2 different neighborhoods of the city. So that way transportation isn't as much of an issue for folks. And the ones in New Bedford are sponsored by Bank 5, and they let us just use their properties. So they're right on bus routes if people need them. They're right on, Acushnet Ave, County Street.
You got to think of those.
They're there. Yeah.
You got to think of those.
It's an easy way to get in and out, get your produce, go be with your family at night after you get out of work. So.
I was talking to State Rep Paul Schmid, who came in recently, and he talked about, obviously he represents Westport as well as a portion of New Bedford, but he was talking about how farmers have stepped up to donate fresh produce at farmers markets. And the other thing he was telling me too, and I have seen that, is like the fish industry at times has given catch for food. Yeah. So it's like outside people are sort of trying to do their part to help out. As he, the hard thing too is if you're not used to that kind of food,
it's how do you store it and transport it?
How do you store it, transport it? How do you cook it?
How do you cook it? It's
Are the kids going to like it?
Yep.
I would. If you're hungry though, you're going to eat.
You're going to figure it out. I think that's where like a cell phone is a blessing and a curse at the same time. Where we did a partnership last year where we got oysters, which are not my favorite, to be honest. Not for me. But if it's an offering, I notice like at our mobile markets a lot, people will try things at least once. And so we did see that when we gave out the oysters too. And people were asking how to prepare. I have no idea. I don't eat them. I don't know how to cook them. But that's where, again, like, okay, well, why don't you Google like an easy recipe with oysters, and that's where it's good, is you can look up those things very quickly. The Greater Boston Food Bank actually even has on their website this amazing tool, honestly, that's not talked about enough, where you can actually type in what ingredients you have, and they'll come up with some kind of recipe using some or all of them. So it's actually very cool for anybody to use that. I found it recently, and I'm like, we don't talk about this enough. So that's a great piece. I mean, I don't know what they have for oysters, but I'm sure they have other
some
seafood.
Sort of chowder or seafood.
Right, exactly. I'm sure there's some kind of seafood recipe that you can use on how you cook that meat and how you store it and all of that too. So yeah, we have seen some different partnerships come out of the pandemic with the seafood industry, where farmers are calling us more frequently saying, hey, I didn't sell this at the market this week, do you want it? There's a farm in Dartmouth, the Flying Carrot, who we actually, one of our friends over at the Marion Institute actually won a year free eggs. So she got a dozen eggs every week for a year, and she actually donated them to us. So we were able to pick them up all at once and then give them out along our route. And now the woman from Flying Carrot, now that she knows about us and what we do, she calls us all the time. So now we have a better partnership with her, and it's nice to see more people going, oh, I didn't realize these programs existed. How else can I do something?
Right, and that the relationships are really what carry the programs through. Not just the volunteers, but it's those relationships, the fish industry, the farms that are going to help you. How are donations going anyway? I know that, you explained to me about the Greater Boston Food Bank. Their needs are huge, and their donations, it's hard to keep up. Even if the donations have stayed the same, there's still more people now.
Right. So we're seeing locally, at least with the Hunger Commission, we're not having a problem with product coming in. We've always worked on the model as the farm is our steady partner. We get a lot of produce and other items from Sid Wainer. And some of that's been more sporadic, just always has been over the years, but it's steady. And so we're still getting an influx of food frequently. We get that call from a tractor trailer driver who he got to the grocery store and they actually couldn't take the chicken. He's like, do you want the chicken? I can't do anything with it.
Really? That happens?
We'll get those calls. Yeah, we get them probably once a month. We'll get them. And we love those calls because they're unexpected and it's an extra bonus for folks in the area to get those. So we do get those.
Do you buy those?
No, they'll donate it all, because what will happen is the truck driver's like, I can't do anything with it. And so the companies would rather just donate them than anything else. So we'll get frozen chicken. It's typically been chicken, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know what
that's
that
it.
is.
But I've never heard that. Yeah.
But we do get that call. I would say at least once a month we get some kind of call like that, where somebody just did a Google search for us, found us, and then we've kept those partnerships over the year going. So if they are in the area, they have that extra, they'll kick it to us.
And I know, so you've come in the past. I mean, there are certain staples, if you will, that if people are donating, obviously money's the best thing, so you can go get it. But
because then we can buy in bulk, we can get a better
price.
Correct.
But you're still looking at the non-perishable items.
Yes.
And one of the things that you've talked about that's always needed is milk, but it's not something you can buy.
Right. Yes.
And I would assume eggs are sort of in the same.
Eggs are kind of that same boat. And that's where the money piece comes in. If you're donating money, it's a little bit easier because we can buy it in bulk. And then also with a food pantry, you got to make sure they have the space. One of the biggest issues we hear at food pantries is they don't have freezer space. They don't have any kind of storage. They don't have enough storage space. They can house all the non-perishables in the world, but freezer and refrigerated space is a hot commodity. So to just come in and say, I'm going to donate 20 dozen eggs, well, now we've got to find the right person who has the space. Yeah. So if we have the money for it, or when we can plan ahead with a Flying Carrot farm, we can find those right partners and not be so much on the panic mode on okay, we've got a day to figure out what to do with some of this stuff. But there's always staples that people need. Peanut butter and jelly, that can be used in so many different ways.
Kids live on that.
Exactly. We've got kids, that's it. Mac and cheese, cereals, any kind of canned meat, whether it's tuna, canned chicken.
Pastas.
Those are always good. Pastas are easy to make. Because I think that's the other thing, too, is you want to keep things a little bit simple, too. You don't have to give something that requires now 7 other ingredients to prepare it. You want to make sure.
It's funny. That's why, and it's funny because I've always, going back 100 years ago when I used to do stuff with the United Way, when we used to do the cans across the park 1,000 years ago. It's that mac and cheese is just gold.
Yes,
especially
it really is.
Especially with family, with kids.
If you got kids, mac and cheese is always the answer. And so that's an easy thing to prepare for people.
But do they get the milk and stuff? Because I know that's something that you guys push, but are they able to get the milk, the eggs?
So yes and no. I mean, we look at it, if you're going to a food pantry, hopefully you are getting those SNAP benefits. And the SNAP benefits will cover those dairy items like a milk, a cheese, the eggs, whatever it may be. So the hope is that, even though you're visiting a food pantry or coming to one of our programs, that you're also able to get on this program as well to help you buy some of those other things that we might not have or might not be able to have at that point, or maybe you showed up at the end of the hours that somebody's open and now they've run out of something. Those benefits really will just be amazing for you.
Are you finding, as you're talking to people, and as you said, you're going to get more calls, that people are qualified for the SNAP benefits? Because as you said, there's people who are working and theoretically are, quote, middle class, who may or may not be eligible for.
I think I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that they are making some adjustments to SNAP benefits just because of having those things in mind. So it's just doing the research on seeing if you qualify, coming to somewhere like our family center and sitting down with them and say, what else, if I don't qualify, what else might be out there for me that maybe I do qualify for, or, what are the free programs locally? I mean, we as the Hunger Commission service over 20 food pantries locally, and so that's only a sampling of what's really out there too. So there's plenty of places where you can go for it, but if you've never had to ask before, it's hard to ask, and then it's also like, well, where do I start? That's, I think, one of the biggest barriers. So
as you look down the road, and we got a few minutes left, but so we're touching on this, but you were kind of shaking your head, and as we were talking about like the breakfast and the lunch program ending for schools next year. Now, I understand from Rep. Schmidt, he was telling me that in the budget, the state has theoretically put monies in to keep the programs.
So hopefully that stays.
Correct.
Yeah.
Another thing that I saw, which I never even thought of, which was interesting, was that the college kids, there's a lot of college kids that are hungry.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that until and then I was talking to one of my kids and they're like, oh yeah, kids have to go to the food bank to get food.
So a lot of colleges have started putting in food banks right on campus. So UMass Dartmouth, right down the street from here, has, I believe it's called Arnie's Closet. Hope I'm saying that's the right name, that they started probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer, but it's been within the time I've been at United Way, where they started to hear from a lot of students that because of how high tuition is and all the fees that go with being in school, that they weren't signing up for the dining plans, or they signed up for the minimum and they were still going hungry. And so as students started to hear more of their peers saying this, they were empowered to start their own food pantry right on campus. And I'm hearing this from a lot of schools. It's not just a UMass problem. It's something that a lot of colleges and universities are facing, and that it's typically run by it's student-led. Student brings in extra food if they can, but it is an issue that you don't typically think about.
No.
But if you're spending that much money on schooling, you may take the hit on food and say, you know what, I can go with just a meal a day. I can figure it out. I'll borrow food from my neighbor or my roommate or whatever it is. So it's great that people are thinking about food security a little bit differently and bringing in some of those on-campus food programs and listening to what others' needs are and making that change.
What are you hearing as you look, and I mean, obviously the legislature trying to take steps in that, but food insecurity, and you've mentioned this before in the past with me, it's a senior issue. Are there things that advocating right now that not just the United Way, but organizations are trying to push right now to get some assistance?
Yeah, so there's always some advocating to be done. So there is the Marion Institute has South Coast Food Policy Council. It is something that meets quarterly, and then there is a board that sits on it as well, and I'm on both of those right now. And so each of the parts of the committees are sitting on work groups. So like I'm on a food work group, there is a food access work group, and then there's a policy one. And so we all look at different things that are happening. With the Marion Institute's program as well, there's a listserv that goes out where we get emails constantly about things. So we're constantly being asked to do more advocacy. If it's around the SNAP benefits maybe being cut, we would go and start writing our legislators and say, hey, this cannot happen. We need these benefits locally. If it's around the issue of the food in the schools being cut and not free for everyone anymore, we're all getting on our emails, we're calling people, we're all working as a community to really help the legislator realize how important those issues are for our local community. So yeah, it's something that all the organizations locally are so committed to, and making sure that we're doing what's right for our community. For those residents who are struggling, those residents who's never struggled before but now are seeing an issue, we're just super committed to that.
And as you said, I mean, 1 in 11 kids here in Eastern Mass, but that still means you've got, and I would imagine that senior citizens that, that
it's a similar
with Social Security, they don't have the income either. They're probably paying rent or mortgage.
And again, it goes back to, do you buy the prescriptions or do you buy the food?
Right, in medical.
And that's something we've seen for years. That's a trend we've always heard from seniors specifically, is that prescriptions are very expensive. And so it's what do you buy? We also hear of, if an elderly person has a pet, they'll choose to get their prescriptions and their pet food over feeding themselves. And that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
That's a really scary thing to think about, is that, that's great. But your prescriptions are only going to really work if you're trying to be healthy too, and you're getting the right foods in your body and that you're actually eating.
Right.
So I think we're going to see that more in seniors, unfortunately, because they are feeling the effects of the inflation just like everybody else. They're seeing their gas prices go up, and if they've got a lot of doctor's appointments, it's how do you get to them with the gas prices the way they are and the food prices the way they are. And
the thing that's scary that I think, so we haven't really hit the heat yet, when electricity is going to go up because of AC.
Yep.
And really, we haven't had the winter yet when oil prices go up. I mean, that's something we'll have you back in 6 months or so, because those are things that you're going to be dealing with
come that time of
year. And that's not even on the radar right now.
No, and I mean, there are assistance programs. So, PACE, that's in New Bedford, they do some utility programs. They do things with fuel assistance in the winter. And they've seen an uptick in the numbers over the years. They are doing the best they can to get to all the applications, make sure people are taken care of, for sure. But I think that we're going to continue to see that rise.
Right.
I think, just from what we're hearing from the food pantries and how many more people they're seeing and how many more new people they're seeing, I think we're going to see the uptick in all the programs numbers.
Got about a minute left. How can people get in touch with you or just get help that they need?
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage anybody to go to our website. It's unitedwayofgnb.org. It's got information if you're looking for help on anything that we've talked about today. There's resources for food. There's lists of food pantries. If you're interested in volunteering, that's all on the site too. And then, of course, if you have a child 18 or younger, you're welcome to come right into our Family Center, which is at 128 Union Street in the DeMello International Center. And our family support workers will work with you to help get you SNAP benefits, to help you with housing, to help you with anything that you need help with.
I should also mention too that go to the city's website to
of
check
course.
on the
lunch schedule,
the lunch in the park, and
lunch in the
the dinner at Monty's.
Absolutely.
I don't exactly know the times.
I don't either.
I haven't seen them up yet, but
the lunch is usually like the 11 to 1, I believe.
Yeah, it's usually and it'll be every day at a different place.
Yes.
The dinners are just starting, but go to the city's website and go to Park and Rec, and that'll have it because they're the ones that are running the program.
Exactly.
It's good seeing you. A lot of info today.
Thank you.
All right, Victoria Grasela from the United Way. That's going to do it for this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.